What is that term that Jefferson wrote? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness mean to you? What does that mean? What do you think he meant by that?
Well, you got to be happy. You got to live life, and you got to work, or you can't eat. Pursuit of happiness is you're always trying to find it.
Americans have defined happiness as being out there rather than in here. And if that's your attitude, I happen to think that humans are built in a way that you're not going to find it out there. But if people keep telling you it's out there, then you're going to be chasing and chasing and chasing. And because you're not going to find it, you're going to be forever chasing it.
And there's been trends over the last few decades that Americans have fewer intimate ties to other people. They become less happy. And one of the reasons that that happens is that people move so much now. And so instead of growing up in your hometown and you have all your friends from grade school and high school in the neighborhood and you have all these people that you're close to, you're moving to a new city and maybe you only have one or two friends.
For generations, happiness could be found in our own backyards. But today, it's not unusual for our family members to be separated by hundreds or thousands of miles. Because so many of us leave home in pursuit of that happiness. Along the way, we found this to be the case in beautiful but strangely quiet Bluefield, West Virginia.
When I first moved to Bluefield in 1939, I was not quite sure exactly whether I was going to like Bluefield or not. And I can remember people on Saturday night would go downtown and park along the street and watch people as they walked along and talked and shopped. And gradually I began to realize that it wasn't the size of the area, but it was the closeness of the area. The theaters were really nice. It was a place that you could send your children. I began to see things really change. The busyness, the people walking down the street with a smile on their face, someone coming along whistling, just didn't come around anymore.
You go back, every major survey I could find, number one concern when relocating was salary. You're never going to beat that. Number two is always cultural activities. You bring in the cultural activities, people quit leaving. We've got a terrible brain drain here. We've got bright people with good hearts and minds, and they leave, they split because they think there's nothing here for them.
And this is a problem, and it's a peculiarly American thing. Tocqueville again comments on this. Americans, restless energy. We're constantly moving, constantly going on. I'm from here, and then I lived in Chicago, and then I went to New York and Washington, D.C. I've been all over the place, and that's the norm in America. In other cultures, it's just not the case.
When I got too old to be able to put bread on the table, my children and their children were there to cover my tracks. Well, today in the United States of America, when my children are grown, they go off to New York or California or Australia or wherever, and I'm left alone. I was talking to a friend at coffee this morning, and he was talking about his 401k. 50 years ago, who needed a 401k? The family just took care of the family. That's part of the natural river of life.
The children today, in other words, want me to move and come to them, but if I would go there, they're always in an airplane going someplace. And so really, they wouldn't be in a position to take care of me. They'd like for me to come and live with them, but their culture is so different from mine that I took out long-term care insurance a long time ago, so that I could take care of myself.
What scientists try to figure out is which story is more common. And it turns out that it's the story of resilience that is far more common than we ourselves predict as people, or we predict as psychologists. So you've got stories of somebody who did really well in bad circumstances and somebody who's doing really badly in circumstances that weren't good, but really weren't awful. And the question we have to ask as scientists is which of these stories is most common, because every possible story you can tell about people, there is somebody out there with that story. Turns out that when you study people who've gone through almost any kind of tragedy or trauma, you find that the vast majority of them do pretty darn well when things go pretty darn bad. I know it sounds like a country song, but it's true.
One of the things that I did as part of my happiness project was to read memoirs of catastrophe, and mostly these were memoirs of people who had cancer or other kind of terminal or very, very serious illnesses, but there were also people who had divorce, people who had family tragedies, this kind of thing. So there's this real call to appreciate what your life is before this happens, and then also appreciate that oftentimes these catastrophic events, people come to believe that they're the better for them. They feel happier coming out the other end.
When someone has a loss, a great loss, it leads to great personal growth. Sometimes when I'm speaking to large audiences, I'll say, would you please raise your hand if you've experienced physical, emotional, or mental pain in your life? And of course, everyone's hand goes up, along with a bunch of chuckles of recognition. And I remind them that they are probably a little stronger, a little wiser, and maybe even more compassionate for having gone through that difficulty.
You hope that somewhere within you is that capacity to not despair.
Well, you know, one thing, you know, you struggle with, so you look back at your life and you struggle with those hopes and those dreams. I never thought that I would put my hopes and dreams in somebody that I helped get elected president that would then make the decision to send my son into war. Who is in Iraq today. And that's a struggle I still have, that my own son is in harm's way in some way, though not directly, in some way, because of where my hopes and dreams were. And as a parent and as a person, that's a very hard thing to struggle through. It's made me a more compassionate person. It's opened my eyes, my own eyes, up to decisions that I made that I'm much more thoughtful about today.
The challenges we find in our relationships, in our physical issues and with our body, career decisions, all lead to self-knowledge, exploring our values. Who are we? What's important in life? I've never seen an adversity, a challenge in life that didn't lead to growth.
One of the true principles of happiness, one of the universals that comes up over and over again, is how many women you have in your life. Because both men and women need women, because women are better at intimate relationships.
Well, we met 56 years ago on a college campus. She came walking across in a bright red dress, and I said, hey, I got to meet that gal.
And so, if you're feeling lonely, you need to make a female friend.
You got to find a good companion that's compatible to yourself, and go through a whole lot of turmoil, but you'll still realize that that's the person made for you. I've been married 25 years, and I've loved every minute of it.
You know, one of the great mysteries is the relationship between spirituality and happiness and contentment and even physical well-being. There are scholars across the United States who study the mind-body connection, who tell us that people who pray, that people who participate in religious experiences, who are struck by cancer, often have a longer lifespan after diagnosis than individuals who don't engage in acts of spirituality, who don't pray, and so on. It's certainly one of the things that is of great interest to scholars. What is the relationship of spirituality to well-being.
The Pew Foundation and other organizations have done a series of studies showing that people with religious faith or religious conviction tend to be happier than those without. Now, well, the question becomes, why is that the case? And you can talk about hope, you can talk about a certain confidence that, this is not the only game in town, that there's a next life and something to look forward to. But I think another dynamic clearly is community, the idea that one has a network of people one can count on, and that's one of the things that religion does, and religion does very well, is foster communities.
One of the central teachings of every serious spiritual tradition, every real religion, is helping you find ways to outwit your ego and its designs. We all seem to be afflicted with this strange notion that we're in charge, that we're running stuff, and that when we get what we want, that will make us happy. And it turns out that that's always a deception, and that's always the wrong path.
I would describe myself as a reverent agnostic. I'm not at all a part of a religious practice right now, and I wasn't really raised to be very particularly religious. And one of the things but it's very clear that religion is something that people who are religious are happier, and there's a lot of reasons why that would be true, and it makes sense. There's a sense of perspective that comes from thinking about spiritual matters, that even if you're not sort of a believer or a follower of a particular religion, you can sort of have that perspective, that timeless perspective, that kind of looking at the world through this very large lens and being able to step way back from your life and being able to see it more clearly.
The whole idea of treat others as you want to be treated. And that is as true in what Christ had to say, it's as true as in what Buddha had to say, it's true and if you look at the Bhagavad Gita, in a big basis in Hinduism, it's what they had to say. All of the major, it's true in Judaism, how we treat our neighbor, treat somebody how you want to be treated. We had people, Gandhi remind us of that same principle, treat others as you want to be treated.
Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Period. Do that. You'll have a better world. That's simple. I'm not very smart. I didn't just make that up, but I know that works. I see it work on playgrounds with my kids. I see it work inside my home.
The concept of the debate about organized religion. What's the alternative? Disorganized religion? I mean, does that sound good? Or no religion? No faith in anything? People are just moving along like robots? I mean, I just find the debate to be not even a debate.
There's a principle in Islam. If you do not believe in Jesus Christ, if you do not believe in Moses and all the prophets, Abraham, David, all that, if you don't believe in them, you are not a Muslim. So you become